figure out after we've kind of looked at all the kidney tubules in this now is just the last little bit of the urinary system is kind of what's happening after we get to those collecting ducts in terms of the histology. What we know on this one is there's some smaller tubes and larger tubes that sooner or later go to the renal pelvis. So urine's going to flow from that collecting duct into what's called a minor calyx and then a major calyx to the renal pelvis. What we're going to see is those would actually be lined with transitional epithelium. I generally don't go after those too much in terms of having you identify the major or minor calyces on a slide just because it's really hard to kind of tell what's going on with those. But you can see here these minor calyces to the major calyces to the renal pelvis. And then what we're sooner or later going to get into is the ureter. And that is actually the next thing that we're going to be taking a look at is under the slides is the ureter. So ureters or ureters, these are the main urine tubes that are taking urine which is made in the kidneys and taking it down to the temporary storage of the bladder. We have one coming from each kidney. They enter in the backside, lower backside of the bladder, as you can see on this picture right here. Again, using peristalsis and some smooth muscle to move this. One of the things you'll see is once you kind of get to that major minor calyces and then into the renal pelvis and all the way down to actually through the bladder, we're going to see we start seeing a lot more of that epithelium, like when I was talking about before, which was that kind of stretchier type of epithelium, which is transitional epithelium. It's good because it's impermeable to stuff going through it, is one of the things here, and it also can expand and stretch without losing its structural integrity. The other thing we'll see on the ureters is underneath that inner mucosal layer, there is going to be a muscularis layer on these ones that allows the urine through peristaltic contractions to move from the kidneys down to the actual bladder. And then that would take place because of that, even if you were standing on your head all day, you would still have urine making your way to the bladder. So if you look at it right here, you can see this is a super low power view of this. You can see the lumen in here, some folding in here. And again, that's just a pressure words to back up. All that folding means we can have a little bit of expansion without issues. You can see underneath that epithelium is that lamina propria. Then we have a large muscularis layer. And then again, some of that connective tissue surrounding the outside, one of those adventitia. Again, it is a transitional epithelium, some connective tissue underneath that, and then, like I said, smooth muscle making up that muscularis externa. Sometimes I talk about these cells called umbrella cells, which are a little bit more rounded at the surface, kind of sit above some of these a little bit. As we work our way then past the ureters into the bladder. Bladder is a muscular sac. It's, to me, kind of a storage tank. You're continuously making urine. The fact that we only have to go to the bathroom every so often is because we have the storage tank. If you were urinating as you made it, you would always be urinating. So this is basically a storage tank. Again, transitional epithelium lining the wall because it can stretch and it is impermeable to water. Similar layers as the ureters. It's going to have the lamina propria and connective tissue, submucosa underneath. Then they're going to have a very large muscularis. It's called the detrusor muscle in the bladder. And that is when you're urinating or micturating, that is what's going to contract and expel the urine out your urethra. So again, you can see the transitional epithelium at the surface here in this image. You can then see a lot of that connective tissue, a lot of dense irregular in this case underneath that. If we get down a little bit further, you can see that there is 3 distinct layers to that bladder. Again, collectively referred to as the detrusor muscle, which is going to contract and allow that muscular sac to expel the urine when you need to. Again, you have these umbrella cells, which kind of overarch the surface cells on the ones here. And then finally, the last thing to talk about is the urethra. This is pretty much, it's going to be the exit of the bladder is going to be the urethra. It's at the bottom or most inferior portion of the bladder. The urethra is the tube that's going to expel this out. Depending on what we're looking at here, it can have some variable epithelium. In a lot of cases, there's going to be some stratified squamous on there, but there can also be some pseudostratified as well. So, like it says here, stratified to pseudostratified columnar. So it really depends on what you're looking at on these ones. Not something I generally show you an image of on these ones, but just kind of finishing off these ones here, showing you that it's a little bit distinct. We are looking at a slide of the ureter. You can see the lumen in the center here where I have the pointer right now. You can see the folds of that mucosa, and if we were to zoom in on it, we'll go in even a little bit more. Again, if we zoom in on it, you can see that is this transitional epithelium going along the edges here. These are these surface cells called umbrella cells, which kind of branch out over the underlying cells here. Underneath this, you can see that submucosal layer right here. And as we start working our way down a little bit deeper, you can see a intercircular muscle layer right here, and then you can see that longitudinal smooth muscle layer outside of that, just beneath it there. If we were to go out a little bit further, you will start seeing some of that adventitia, this connective tissue layer that's kind of breaking away around the outside here. The other thing I want to take a look at is the bladder. So I kind of zoomed it in on this one. It's upside down again on these ones. For some reason, this website has them all upside down. Again, if we're looking at specifically the mucosa, you can see an umbrella cell right here, transitional epithelium with the underlying connective tissue underneath that. As we start moving our way down here, you can see we start getting this really thick layer. This is all smooth muscle right here. As I keep going deeper, you can see this is all smooth muscle. And if you look at the image over on the right, or if I zoom out a little bit, you can see this smooth muscle is quite a thick layer as we back out here. So this is all smooth muscle working all the way into here. Again, allowing that bladder to be able to contract and expel that urine out. Really just knowing these distinct layers, knowing the umbrella cells and the type of epithelium are, to me, key things to know about the ureter and the bladder structure here in terms of the histology of it. And that's it. We're moving on now to the reproductive system.